First of all, Dr. Moore, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to do this very special interview. Those that follow my podcast and my radio show on Unity FM, I know they're going to appreciate it. We've had a ton of hits from the last interview we did on last year, and
Oh,
I
great.
appreciate you taking the time.
Well, this book is getting a lot of response, so maybe we'll get some more hits.
It is. So let's go right into it. A religion of one's own. Why this book and why now?
Now, because an awful lot of people are in a state of confusion and actually pain about religion.
Hmm.
So many people are leaving their religious traditions that the ones they grew up in and searching. And that's not a very pleasant thing to do, really. It sounds great, maybe, but it isn't so pleasant. So that's the timeliness of it. And I've lived my whole life studying and thinking about religion, so I think it's time for me to do it too.
Hmm. I totally agree with you. One of the definitions I heard you give in a prior interview for religion is you called it a creative response to the mysteries of life, those mysteries that we deal with. What are those mysteries you were referring to?
I was thinking of kind of ordinary things, like,
Hmm.
first of all, anyway, like sickness. People get sick and they wonder, where in the world did that come from? Did I do something wrong? And what does it mean for me? How should I respond? And they also tend to deal with sickness only on a physical level, whereas it really affects them completely, everything about them. Another area is the death of a friend or a relative.
Hmm.
Death is something that a lot of people just don't know what to do with, how to respond to. I'm not saying anyone really does, but I mean, we could make some progress that way. And yet another one is the mystery of being married.
Hmm.
Awful lot I think it's a mystery. I don't see it as a problem. I see it as a mystery. And that means that this is something quite interesting. If you could stop and think about it, two people bringing their vast worlds together and trying to share them. That's not easy. It's not a problem. It's not a matter of communicating better or doing it right. It's a matter of appreciating how deep it goes and that only religion really can touch it.
Right. Because I believe the last time we spoke, we talked about the experience of the transcendent, and I think from my point of view, I'm still in my 20s, but without that experience of the transcendent, it's hard to make it through life. And I think some people that I encounter that have a problem with religion, they see religion as having the definitive answer for how to deal with these problems. But it's like when you look at it from that point, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like you're surrendering your all to that religious source, and if it doesn't give you what you want, then you put a big X on it. Like how do we interpret these traditions that are supposed to give us guidance?
Well, that's really a good question because I think that the traditions, as much good as they've done, and as much wisdom and beauty they contain and hold and preserve for us, somewhere along the line they got off on the wrong track and they became kind of secular and modern in a
Hmm.
funny way.
Right.
They really didn't. They really didn't serve as channels to the transcendent and the numinous. What they did was tell us how to live and tell us, in facts almost what to believe. And that's not really presenting an opening, a portal to the transcendent for the individual person and for a community. So I think that they made a mistake, and it's time then to correct that. And so when I talk about a religion of one's own, I'm saying that with a profound appreciation for the traditions and what they still have to offer. But I would like to make that shift away from fact and belief and moralism, not morality, but moralism, and telling people too much of what they should do, toward guiding people toward their own mystical experiences and the joy, really, of being in this world in a way that's not materialistic.
Right. What about for those that are having trouble? Because I think we all struggle from time to time with making it through. And I'm trying to formulate the question right, but the core of my question is, how, the traditions are old. so to speak. And this sounds very, and I'm basically messing up the question, but how do we reinterpret those traditions to deal with modern
Oh, yeah.
affairs?
Oh, I understand what you're saying. That's a very, very good question. Because we don't want to go to these traditions the way we always have. For example, you don't have to go to them and be a member. You don't have to join. You don't have to do that. Now, when I say that, some people will say, well, you're recommending just sort of sampling these traditions and it's superficial and it's a cafeteria approach and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it has to be. I know in my own experience, I have really, really to my core been affected by several different religious traditions. And I don't think that's the cafeteria approach, or it's not simplistic, but it's not becoming a member either. I'm not selling my soul to any tradition. So that's something that is different. And another thing to do, I think, is to turn to the traditions and find out what speaks to you in them. You don't have to have the whole thing. You don't have to take everything that's there. Most of them have strengths and weaknesses. You don't need to take on all the weaknesses. Just
Mm-hmm.
take on those things that are really important to you. Like for me, Zen Buddhism has really affected me profoundly in my life. I've
Mm-hmm.
been it for years. I've never become a Zen Buddhist. I've never gone to a monastery. It's not that kind of thing.
Right.
It's that I think that Zen Buddhism has a few teachings and great poetry and stories and figures that steer me in a direction that nothing else can. I don't know any other tradition that can take me to where Zen Buddhism can.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I don't want to become a Buddhist. That's not my. I don't have any. There's nothing in me that wants to join that.
Right. And I, especially being a part of this 20-something generation, and you can tell me about the older generations as well. This sense of belonging and labels, I think it's like a trap that we become caught up in, and we turn to religion for answers. But like you said, we don't have to belong to it or submit to it to study it and enjoy some of the beauties from these different traditions.
That's exactly right. And I would say, never turn to a religious tradition for answers.
Mm,
Always turn to them for insight, which is a really different thing.
right.
Answers is that modern way of thinking where there are problems to solve and we need answers to our questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what religion's about. Religion takes us to very deep places with poetry. It always uses story and images and rituals and that kind of thing. It shouldn't anyway, I think, tell us, giving us any answers about facts or what might be. It rather should give us insights into how to be and what the world is all about.
Right.
But it takes a while to be with it to get those insights.
Right. So these religious traditions, they aren't like magical, because that's even in spirituality, various forms of spirituality and various strands. We often treat them because we're so hungry for something. We treat them like they're magical tools to just solve our problems, and then we get upset when our problems are still there.
Well, that's why I think it's so important to make this a personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean, when I say religion of one's own, I don't mean, creating your own religion that's different from everybody else. I don't know how to put that. It's not like, going apart from people. You can have a community, and you can certainly be with people. It's not that narcissistic, self-absorbed kind of thing.
Right.
But it does mean that you make it something real for yourself, and you don't go through motions. You don't accept someone else's belief just because they tell you. You think about it, you consider it, and you make it your own.
You said a bunch of things, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to back up a bit to what we were talking about. Where does faith fit in at, and uncertainty? Because again, with these same traditions, you talked about how we shouldn't turn to them for answers. We should turn to them for insights, which reminds me of what Bishop Carlton Pearson said. He said that these traditions were written by other humans, and I think sometimes we forget that. We think that they were written by the deities themselves, as opposed to, other humans contemplating what we're contemplating, being moved upon by something inspirational, and then penning the stories, right?
Yeah, certainly there is a side to all these traditions that is highly imperfect because of the people, the people who are running them and guiding them. There have been, most of the religious spiritual traditions, if not all of them, have had remarkable figures who were inspired and really did have a solid, insight into how human life works. I mean, I think Jesus was a figure like that. He understood that just following the rules is not going to get us anywhere.
Right.
We have to get past that stage, and we have to really live from our hearts and be open to people who are different from us. That was a big part of his teaching.
Right.
Well, that's a tremendous insight, and you can build a life on that.
Right.
But that gospel teaching, which is so pristine in itself, quickly, early in history, turned into something very different. It turned into a system where there were certain things you had to believe, otherwise you were sometimes, tortured and killed if you didn't. I mean, it's amazing that happened. So the inspiration was lost and turned into something else that was weird and sadomasochistic and horrible, really, for a lot of people. So we have to be very cautious. There's a difference between the way this human thing evolves, these traditions evolve, which are highly imperfect, and the original inspiration, which is usually quite simple and difficult to live. That's why maybe we turn it into something else. It's a challenge to live where we really live from our hearts and are open to people who are very different from us.
So but can systems in certain occasions, are they okay, like as opposed to just up in the air spirituality? What do you say in terms of that as opposed to the spiritual traditions?
I don't think I followed that exactly. What did you say?
Well, are systems okay? Is there like an upside? Yeah, as opposed to just up in the air spirituality,
Yes.
just doing
What do you
whatever.
mean? Yes. Yes, a vague, unformed spirituality versus having some tradition and system and organization. Does that mean?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Uh-huh. Yes. Well, see, that's what I'm saying. I think that the traditions are wonderful. They're wonderful. When you think of Christianity, I mean, I grew up as a Catholic, when I think of the Mass and the music and the art, not all of it's great, but much of it is fantastic, and the great cathedrals and churches and the figures who have written books, on contemplation and theology. I mean, they're just amazing, totally amazing. So that whole tradition, that form, I think is very important. You don't have to make anything up. When the individual tries to create his own system or his own theology or whatever, usually it's disaster. So it's better to have the traditions and have all that form. All I'm saying is that you don't need to join that tradition and sell your soul to it, so that you do everything that they tell you, and you think just like it's like, whatever they say, you feel you have to be loyal to. I hear this from people now as I'm traveling all the time. They say, if I went to study Zen Buddhism for a while, wouldn't that be disloyal to my belief? People feel that. They feel they're being disloyal to their own belief as they reach out and try to learn more for themselves spiritually. And I think that comes from that old idea that being religious means that you join this church and you're limited to it, and you better believe it and stay faithful to it, or you're in trouble.
Right. And that's an excellent point too, because there's some of us that are so loyal to the church, and we don't take upon ourselves, take that initiative to go deeper into that experience of the transcendent, or that experience of whatever tradition it is on our own. We sit and we listen to whatever the teacher says, and that's it. If the teacher doesn't provide the answers, then we struggle with doubt until the teacher provides that relief for us.
I'm at a point now where, as I said, I was raised a Catholic, and I have explored many different religious traditions. I mean, I have a PhD in religion. I had to. Nothing else a part of my studies. But those studies were not just intellectual; they really affected me. And yet today, having studied all these traditions and been affected by them, I
Mm.
Although the church itself would not accept me, probably. I'm rarely invited to a Catholic church, once in a while. But so I think that, I have to say for myself, my life is my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I know Catholicism very well. I studied that theology. I participated in it as deeply as anybody can. And I still feel myself that I am living the Catholic life, although it's so different from what a lot of other people would imagine it to be and what the organization would want it me to be. And yet I feel fine. I feel very much that I'm now more mature in my Catholic religion than ever. But it's not exclusive, and it's not a bondage for me. It's a joy. It's something I can appreciate.
Mm-hmm. And how did you deal with, and I assume it's probably through the process of aging and maturing as well, that urge to want to find facts and answers? How did that eventually subside? Is that something that will subside through time, or?
Yes, well, for me, I don't know if it was for everybody. I got interested in depth psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and that had a big effect on me. So I've been a psychotherapist for over 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I think when you do that, you realize that there's so much going on deep within every person, and you see the subtleties of it. Then I want to go deep into religion. I don't want any nonsense from it,
Mm-hmm.
And I also separate from my culture. As I think as you become more of an individual person, you are less identified with the culture around you.
Mm.
That's part of your maturing. And the culture around us is totally absorbed in facts. Anything you read is all about facts.
Right.
Just the surface. So they don't even know what we're talking about. Even psychiatry is giving up on going deep and just using medications. That's a sign of where we're headed, which is really bad from my point of view. So I want to go again. I think that kind of a culture, a fact-based culture, has influenced the way people think of religion. So they think of religion as about facts, and they want proofs, and they want demonstration and all that kind of thing. Whereas I think the important thing is insight and the depth of the way in which you live, and the depth of your heart, your connections to the people around you, and to the world in which you live, and the feeling of responsibility for it. That's a very different thing. It's more existential. It's more connected to the world than it is a matter of your head alone.
Right. And I like that you said more connected with the world. So dealing with uncertainty is okay. After your 50, 60 plus years in dealing with spirituality, uncertainty and just having faith and trust, even after doing all of the spiritual work, that's still okay to be human, right? That's the goal of these spiritual traditions, to make us more human.
How can you have faith if you're certain? I don't understand that.
Right.
If you're certain, you don't need to have faith in anything.
Exactly.
Faith means trust. So uncertain. You need to cultivate your uncertainty at the same time you're cultivating your faith. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So again, faith becomes a fact that you assent to. It doesn't mean that you can live in uncertainty and yet trust.
Right.
For
Right.
me, about the afterlife, I can't tell you what the afterlife's about. I know a lot of books are out trying to prove it to us. I could care less about that. I see indications in the world around me that give me faith in an afterlife. It's a question of faith and trust. It's not a matter of another fact that I'm hoping to finally conclude, have an opinion about. That's not it. It's about living with faith and trust based on how you see life is unfolding around you.
Right. What are some of the fundamentals from your book about how we create a religion of our own? What are some of the things you go into detail about? Some of the basics that we need.
Well, there are a lot of things. There are certain things I think that from the traditions that you could do. For example, one thing I recommend that every person become a mystic.
Mm.
That's unusual because, again, that goes against that fact-based religion. But when you look at all the spiritual traditions of the world and the religions, you see that really the heart of it were the mystics. That is, people who can have experiences where they feel taken away and what they know about life and about their religion and their spirituality doesn't come from analysis. It comes from experiences of absorption in nature or in art or in the word they use often, the mystics use, is that you participate in life rather than just observe it or just analyze it. You participate in the mystery of life. And so I recommend we all become mystics. That's one phase of our religion, one piece. And that means that you find the best way you have of getting lost in a positive way. For me, it's my piano. I can meditate at the piano better than anywhere. For some people, it's going out into the woods or by the ocean. They can do it best there. Some people do it by taking care of children. There are lots of ways to become a mystic. That's just one piece of this plan that I present in this book about how to develop your own religion.
And how would you define a mystic? To simplify it, would it be just a person that is willing to connect with the transcendent in their own way through some form of ritual, whatever that may be?
Yes, exactly. Somehow you connect with the transcendent. That's a good way to put it. You lose your self-consciousness, your need to understand everything. Your language becomes more poetic because the poetic language is best for describing this experience that has so much that is unknown in it. It's not about facts. It's just a mysterious experience, very hard to describe. So most mystics write a kind of spiritual poetry, like Rumi. Everyone's reading Rumi. He was a mystic who wrote poetry that conveys what he experienced. There are a lot of Christian mystics, Jewish mystics. There are a lot of people who have been mystics. And the Sufis in Islam, write great mystical poetry. So, that's something else you might do too. If you do have mystical experiences, and I don't mean that they have to be huge and fantastic. I mean just ordinary, everyday experiences. You may want to find some way to express the experience you've had. And you may write a song, or you may write a poem or a story. This is traditional, and it's something that you can do as part of your own religion.
Right. So, Dr. Moore, to bring this to a close, because you've said so many things. How do we get a hold of this book, and how do we get a hold of your work and find out what you're doing, where you're going to be speaking at, giving workshops?
There are a couple of sources. The best place would be my website, which is careofthesoul.net, not .com. Careofthesoul.net. And there I have a blog and an events page and information about all my books. This is the 20th book that I published. And there's a sort of what do you call it? There's a page on my website called BARQUE, BARQUE, that summarizes everything that's going on in my talks and in publicity about me, articles and reviews and that kind of thing. It's a wonderful compendium of everything that I'm doing.
Dr. Moore, as always, it is a pleasure, and as far as getting a hold of your book, we can order it everywhere books are sold, correct?
Everywhere. It's everywhere now, yeah. All bookstores and every place online.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dr. Moore, thank you so much for your time. My audience is going to love this, and I appreciate, again, you speaking with us.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm really happy to talk to you anytime.
Thank you so much.